Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Aurora's edge and watched the stars through the main screen. His ship was far from Earth, farther than any human had ever traveled before. Today, they would test something new, something that could change everything for humanity. "All systems ready, Captain," said Lisa Banks from her seat at the navigation controls. She had been working on this project for 3 years. Her hands moved quickly over the buttons and screens in front of her. Jake looked around at his crew. Carlos Rivera sat at the engineering station, watching numbers and graphs that showed how the ship was running. Dr. Amy Stone was at the science station, ready to record everything that happened. Ryan Clark was at communications, listening for any signals from space. "Carlos, how does our new drive look?" Jake asked. Carlos smiled and turned to face his captain. "The quantum jump drive is running perfectly. All the tests on Earth worked. Great. We should be able to jump to Alpha Centauri in just a few seconds instead of years." Jake nodded. This was the moment humanity had dreamed about for centuries. Faster than light travel, the ability to reach other star systems quickly, the chance to explore the galaxy. "Ben, are our weapons and shields ready?" Jake asked his security chief. Ben Hayes looked up from his station. "Everything is working fine, Captain. But I still think we should be more careful. We don't know what's out there." Jake understood Ben's worry. They were about to do something no human had ever done before. Jump across space in the blink of an eye. What if something went wrong? What if there were aliens out there? What if the drive didn't work as planned? "Laura, how are our systems?" Jake asked the young technician. Laura Price checked her screens. "All green, Captain. The ship is ready for quantum jump." Jake took a deep breath. "All right, everyone. This is it. We're about to make history. Lisa, set course for Alpha Centauri." Lisa's fingers danced across her controls. "Course set, Captain. Alpha Centauri system, 4.3 light-years from Earth. Carlos, start the quantum drive." Carlos began the startup process. The ship hummed with new energy. Lights flickered across the bridge as power flowed to the experimental drive system. Everyone held their breath. "Drive is charging," Carlos said. 10 seconds to jump." Jake gripped his chair. This was it. The moment that would change human history forever. 5 seconds, Carlos called out. 3, 2, 1. Jump. The ship disappeared from its location near Earth. For a moment, everything was white light and strange sounds. Jake felt like he was falling and flying at the same time. Then everything went quiet. But something was wrong. Instead of floating in space near Alpha Centauri, the Aurora's edge was inside something. The main screen showed walls stretching away in all directions. Huge walls made of some kind of metal that glowed with soft blue light. "Where are we?" Jake asked, but his voice sounded strange in the thick air around them. Lisa checked her instruments. Her face went pale. "Captain, we're not in the Alpha Centauri system. We're not in space at all. We're inside something." Dr. Amy Stone looked at her readings with wide eyes. "These readings are impossible. We're in a space bigger than Earth's moon. And there's air here. Breathable air." Carlos was hitting buttons fast, trying to understand what happened. "The quantum drive worked, but something pulled us off course. Some kind of gravity field we didn't expect." Ryan Clark turned from his station. "Captain, I'm getting readings of movement out there. Big movements. We're not alone." Jake stared at the screen showing the massive space around them. They could see structures in the distance. Buildings, maybe. Or machines. Everything was huge, built for beings much larger than humans. "Ben, weapon status?" Jake asked. "All weapons ready, but Captain, I don't think our weapons would do much good here. Whatever built this place has technology far beyond ours." Jake made a decision. "I'll stop. Lisa, try to figure out where we are. Amy, start scanning everything. I want to know what kind of place this is. Carlos, can we get out of here?" Carlos shook his head. "I don't think so, Captain. The quantum drive is connected to something now. It's like this place grabbed us and won't let go." Dr. Amy Stone looked up from her instruments. "Captain, you need to see this. This isn't just a big empty space, it's a ship. A massive ship traveling through space, and it's old. Very old." How old? Jake asked. Maybe millions of years. The materials I'm reading don't match anything we know. But Captain, there's more. This ship has been watching us, watching Earth. There are records here, information about human history going back thousands of years. Jake felt cold. They've been watching us for how long? Before Amy could answer, the lights around them changed. The blue glow became brighter, and new sounds filled the air. Musical sounds like singing, but not from any human voice. Captain, Ryan said, his voice shaking. I think they know we're here. On the main screen, something moved in the distance. Something big and bright, floating toward their ship. It didn't look like any machine Jake had ever seen. It moved like it was alive. But it glowed like a star. What do we do? Lisa asked. Jake straightened in his chair. This was first contact. The moment humanity had wondered about for generations. But it wasn't happening the way anyone had planned. We wait, Jake said. And we hope they're friendly. The glowing thing came closer. Soon they could see it was. Not just one being, but many beings working together. They seemed to be made of light and energy, changing shape as they moved. Captain, Amy whispered. I think we just met our first aliens, and I think we're in their home. The glowing being stopped just outside the Aurora's edge. Jake could see them clearly now on the main screen. They looked like living geometry, changing from circles to triangles to shapes that had no names. They pulsed with soft light and seemed to talk to each other without sound. Amy, what do you think they are? Jake asked. Dr. Amy Stone studied her instruments. They're pure energy, Captain, but organized energy. Like they'd turned themselves into living light. I've never seen anything like it. One of the beings moved closer to the ship. It grew brighter and began to make sounds. Not words, but musical tones that seemed to have meaning. Ryan Clark worked at his station, trying to understand. Captain, I think it's trying to talk to us. The sounds have patterns. It might be some kind of language. Can you translate? Jake asked. I'm trying, but it's completely different from any human language. Give me some time. Jake made a decision. Amy, I want you to take Ben and Laura on an away mission. Use the shuttle to get closer to those beings. But be careful. Dr. Amy Stone nodded. She was excited, but also scared. This was what she had trained for her whole life. First contact with alien life. Ben Hayes checked his weapons. I don't like this, Captain. We don't know if they're dangerous. That's why you're going with them, Jake said. Keep everyone safe. Laura. Price gathered her equipment. I'll bring everything we need to communicate and record what happens. The 3 crew members took the small shuttle and left the Aurora's edge. As they got closer to the alien beings, the musical sounds got louder and more complex. It's beautiful, Amy said, listening to the alien song. Like a whole orchestra, but with sounds we can't make. The beings seemed to notice the shuttle. They moved in patterns around it, but they didn't attack or try to stop it. Instead, they seemed curious. Laura set up her equipment. I'm recording everything. These sound patterns are amazing. There's math in the music, equations and formulas. One being came very close to the shuttle. It changed shape until it looked almost like a human, but made of golden light. Then it began to speak in a way they could understand. Not with words, but by putting thoughts directly into their minds. Welcome, young travelers, the voice said in their heads. We have watched you for so long. We did not expect you to come here. Amy spoke out loud, hoping the being could hear her. We're from Earth. We're humans. We didn't mean to come into your ship. Our drive brought us here by accident. Accident. The being's light flickered like laughter. There are no accidents with quantum travel. Your ship was called here by the heart of our vessel. You have done something we thought impossible. What do you mean? Ben asked, still watching for danger. You broke through space itself and arrived in our most sacred place. No being has ever entered the heart chamber uninvited. Some of my people think you are contamination that must be removed. Laura felt afraid. Removed? You mean killed? Perhaps. But others of us are curious. How did your small species learn to manipulate quantum reality? We have studied you for 30 of your centuries. You were not ready for this technology. Amy's mind raced. You've been watching us for 3,000 years. Why? The being changed shape again, becoming more complex. We are the architects. We travel between galaxies, studying young races as they grow. We collect knowledge of how life develops, but we always watch from far away. Direct contact changes everything. How many species have you watched? Amy asked. Thousands. From hundreds of worlds. But none have surprised us like humans have. You think in ways we do not understand. You solve problems with methods that should not work. Back on the Aurora's edge, Jake was listening to everything through the communications link. Carlos was studying the ship's connection to the alien vessel. Captain, Carlos called out, our quantum drive has bonded with their ship somehow. The energy patterns are mixing together. I don't think we can separate without damaging both vessels. Jake felt worried. Were they trapped here forever? The architect being continued talking to the away team. Your arrival has created a crisis among my people. The elders believe you have polluted our sacred space. They want to cleanse the heart chamber and send you away. And what do you believe? Amy asked. I believe this is the first truly interesting thing to happen in a million years, the being replied. Your species fascinates us. You use intuition where we use logic. You create where we calculate. You hope where we predict. More beings gathered around the shuttle. Some glowed brighter, others darker. Amy realized they were having an argument. What are they discussing? She asked. Your fate, the architect said. And ours. Your quantum drive has done something to our ship. We are connected now in ways we do not understand. Some believe this connection will destroy us. Others think it might save us. Save you from what? Ben asked. The being was quiet for a long moment. We have become too perfect, human Ben Hayes. We know everything, can predict everything, can control everything. But we have forgotten how to grow, how to change, how to be surprised. We are dying from our own success. Laura understood. You need chaos. You need uncertainty. You need what makes us human. Yes? But accepting that means accepting that we are not as superior as we believed. Many of my people cannot face this truth. The argument among the aliens grew more intense. The musical sounds became sharp and discordant. What's happening? Amy asked. The Council of Architects is deciding. They will either welcome you as the first species to enter our domain, or they will erase you to preserve our purity. Jake's voice came through the communicator. Away team, get back here now. I'm reading massive energy buildup around the ship. But before they could move, the space around them filled with light. Dozens of architect beings surrounded the shuttle and the Aurora's edge. The decision has been made, their contact said. You will be tested. If you prove worthy of the knowledge you have accidentally gained, you will live and learn with us. If you fail, you will be sent away with your memories erased. What kind of test? Amy asked. Test that will measure not just your intelligence, but your creativity, your cooperation, and your wisdom. Tests that will show us if humans truly deserve to join the community of galactic civilizations. The away team returned to the Aurora's edge quickly. Jake gathered all his crew on the bridge. Well, people, it looks like we're about to take the most important test in human history, he said. Everything we do from here will determine not just our fate, but the fate of our entire species. Amy looked at the massive alien structures around them. Captain, I don't think they just want to test us. I think they need us to succeed. Without us, they might face extinction. Jake nodded. Then we better not fail. The future of two civilizations might depend on it. The architects moved the Aurora's edge to a different part of their massive ship. Jake and his crew found themselves in what looked like a testing facility. Strange rooms and corridors stretched out in all directions, each one glowing with different, colored lights. Captain Morrison, the architect leader spoke in their minds. You and 2 of your crew will represent humanity in our trials. Choose wisely. The tests will challenge your mind, your heart, and your spirit. Jake looked at his crew. He needed people who could think fast and work together. Lisa, you're with me. Your navigation skills might help us find our way through whatever they throw at us. Ryan, I need your communication abilities to help us understand what they want. Lisa Banks felt nervous but excited. What kind of tests are these? We do not test knowledge, the architect explained. We test how you think, how you solve problems, how you work with others. These things tell us more than facts ever could. The first test chamber was a maze, but not like any maze humans had ever seen. The walls moved and changed. The floor shifted under their feet and the ceiling showed stars that weren't really there. The goal is simple, the architect said. Reach the center of the maze. But the path changes based on your choices. Logic alone will not help you here. Jake, Lisa, and Ryan entered the maze together. Lisa immediately started mapping their route, but the walls moved every time she thought she understood the pattern. This is impossible, Ryan said. Every time we figure out where to go, everything changes. Jake stopped and thought. Wait. Maybe that's the point. Maybe we're not supposed to map it like a normal maze. Lisa, what if we stop trying to predict where the walls will be? Lisa looked confused. But how do we navigate without knowing the layout? Trust, Jake said. Trust our instincts. Trust each other. Maybe the maze responds to how we feel, not just how we think. They tried a different approach. Instead of planning their route, they followed their gut feelings. When Lisa felt they should go left, they went left. When Ryan sensed they should go straight, they went straight. When Jake had a hunch about a hidden passage, they looked for it. Amazingly, it worked. The walls stopped changing when they stopped trying to control them. They reached the center of the maze in minutes. Interesting, the architect said. Most species try to solve this with logic and fail. You used intuition and succeeded quickly. The second test was harder. They were put in a room with several alien creatures that didn't speak any language they knew. The creatures looked scared and hungry. These beings are from a world we studied long ago, the architect explained. They need help, but you cannot understand their words. How will you communicate with them? Ryan tried using his communication equipment, but nothing worked. The aliens just made strange sounds and gestures. Lisa had an idea. Ryan, what if we don't try to understand their language? What if we try to understand their needs? The three humans watched the alien creatures carefully. They noticed the creatures kept pointing to their mouths and looking at some containers in the corner of the room. They're hungry, Jake realized. And those containers might have food. But when they opened the containers, they found there wasn't enough food for all the creatures. There were 6 aliens, but only enough food for 4 of them. This is the real test, Lisa whispered. They want to see what we do when we can't help everyone. Jake thought hard. This wasn't just about feeding the aliens. This was about showing the architects how humans make moral choices. We share, Jake said. We divide the food equally, even if it means everyone gets less. Ryan and Lisa agreed. They split the food into 6 equal portions. It wasn't much for each creature, but everyone got something. The alien creatures looked surprised, then happy. They shared their small portions with each other, making sure the youngest ones ate first. You chose equality over efficiency, the architect observed. Most species either feed the strongest to ensure some survive, or they let the creatures fight for the food. Your choice was mathematically inefficient but morally interesting. The third test was the hardest yet. Jake, Lisa, and Ryan were separated into different rooms. Each room had a puzzle that couldn't be solved alone. They could hear each other through speakers, but they couldn't see what the others were dealing with. Jake's room had a wall of buttons with strange symbols. Lisa's room had a series of rotating wheels with matching symbols. Ryan's room had a screen showing mathematical equations. You must solve all 3 puzzles at the same time, the architect said, but each puzzle requires information from the other rooms. They started by describing what they could see to each other. Jake told them about his symbols. Lisa described her wheels and Ryan read out his equations. Wait, Lisa said after a while. Jake, when you press the 3rd button from the left, does a symbol appear on your wall? Yes, it looks like a triangle, with a circle inside. I have the same symbol on one of my wheels. Ryan, does your first equation have anything to do with triangles? Ryan studied his screen. Yes, it's calculating the area of a triangle, and when I solve it, new numbers appear. They realized the tests were connected. Jake's buttons controlled symbols that Lisa needed to align her wheels, and Lisa's wheels generated numbers that Ryan needed for his equations. But Ryan's equations created new symbols that Jake had to find. It took them 2 hours of talking, sharing ideas, and working together, but they finally solved all 3 puzzles at once. Remarkable, the architect said. This test usually takes other species days to complete, if they complete it at all. Your species has an unusual ability to cooperate across distances. Back on the Aurora's edge, Dr. Amy Stone was making discoveries of her own. The architects had given her access to some of their databases. What she found was both amazing and frightening. "Captain," she called through the communicator, "I've found something important. The architects have records of thousands of species from across the galaxy, but many of these species aren't around anymore." "What happened to them?" Jake asked during a break between tests. "That's the scary part. They didn't die from wars or disasters. They became too dependent on architect guidance. They stopped thinking for themselves. Eventually, they just faded away." Jake felt a chill. "Are you saying the architects accidentally destroyed the species they tried to help?" "I think so. They're so advanced that other species couldn't keep up with their own development. They became like pets or children, never able to stand on their own." This information worried Jake, but he couldn't think about it now. The final test was beginning. The last test was different from the others. Jake, Lisa, and Ryan were brought to a room that looked like the bridge of a spaceship. But this ship was in trouble. Alarms were ringing, systems were failing, and they could see on the screens that the ship was heading toward a dangerous asteroid field. "This is a simulation of a real disaster from our history," the architect explained. "A ship carrying 10,000 beings was trapped in an asteroid storm. Save them." Jake sat in the captain's chair. Lisa took navigation and Ryan handled communications. But the ship's systems were completely alien to them. Nothing worked the way they expected. "The engines won't respond," Lisa called out. "I can't contact the other ships in the area," Ryan added. Jake studied the situation. The logical thing to do was try to understand the alien systems first, then make a plan. But they didn't have time for that approach. "Forget the manual," Jake decided. "We think like humans, not like architects. Lisa, use the engines like they're ours, just with different buttons. Ryan, try to contact other ships using basic math and pictures." They stopped trying to be perfect and started being creative. Lisa flew the ship using instincts she'd developed piloting human vessels. Ryan sent simple mathematical signals that any intelligent species could understand. Jake made command decisions based on experience and gut feelings rather than complete information. It worked. They saved the ship and all 10,000 beings aboard. The architect leader appeared in the room with them. For the first time, it seemed truly excited. "In our history, this disaster killed everyone aboard," it said. "Our greatest captains failed to save them because they followed proper procedures. You succeeded because you didn't know the proper procedures. You improvised, adapted, and took risks we would never take." Jake stood up. "Did we pass your tests?" "You did more than pass," the architect replied. "You showed us something we had forgotten. Sometimes being imperfect is more useful than being perfect. Sometimes not knowing everything is better than knowing everything." Lisa smiled. "So what happens now?" "Now," the architect said, "we face a much bigger test. Our ship is in real danger, and all our perfect solutions have failed. We need your human chaos to save us all." The architect leader brought Jake and his crew to the center of their massive ship. The heart chamber was even more incredible than they had imagined. It was a sphere of pure energy, pulsing with the thoughts and memories of millions of architect minds. "This is our collective consciousness," the architect explained. "Every architect who has ever lived shares their knowledge here. It is the source of our wisdom and our power." Carlos Rivera stared at the energy readings on his scanner. "Captain, this thing is connected to our quantum drive somehow. The energy patterns are synchronized." "That is the crisis we face," the architect said. "When your ship arrived, your quantum drive bonded with our heart chamber. We cannot separate them without destroying both systems. Dr. Amy Stone studied the readings. But that's not the worst part, is it? There's something else wrong. The architect's light dimmed sadly. You are very perceptive, Dr. Stone. Yes, there is more. Our heart chamber is dying. We have become so logical, so perfect, that we no longer generate new ideas. We only repeat old ones. Without growth, without change, our consciousness will fade away. Jake felt the weight of responsibility. You need our creativity to survive, but we need your knowledge to grow. Maybe we can help each other. That is what some of us hope, the architect replied. But others fear that joining with your chaotic minds will destroy our perfect order. Ben Hayes had been quiet, but now he spoke up. Captain, I've been exploring other parts of the ship. I found something disturbing. He led them to a section of the ship that felt different, colder, darker. Here they found chambers filled with strange objects and preserved specimens. These are collection rooms, Ben said. The architects have been collecting things from other worlds for millions of years. But look at this. He showed them preserved bodies of different alien species, thousands of them from hundreds of different worlds. Where are these species now? Ben asked. Why are they all dead? The architect guide became very quiet. They are not dead. They are preserved. When species reach a certain level of development, we preserve the best examples of their culture and biology. Amy felt sick. You mean you killed them? No, the architect said quickly. We saved them from themselves. Every species eventually destroys itself through war, pollution, or disaster. We preserve them before that happens. But they're not alive, Jake said angrily. They're just museum pieces. Laura Price had been scanning the preserved specimens. Captain, these readings are strange. Some of these beings show brain activity. Very faint, but it's there. The architect seemed uncomfortable. Sometimes we preserve consciousness along with physical form. It allows us to study their thought patterns. Jake felt cold anger building inside him. You're keeping intelligent beings as prisoners in your museum. How is that different from slavery? We save them from extinction, the architect insisted. Without our intervention, they would all be dead now. But they can't live, can't grow, can't choose their own futures, Lisa said. That's not salvation. That's imprisonment. The architect was quiet for a long time. Finally, it spoke. Perhaps this is why our consciousness is dying. We have become collectors instead of teachers. We preserve instead of nurture. We control instead of guide. Carlos had been working on the quantum drive connection while they talked. Captain, I think I understand what happened. Our drive didn't just connect with their heart chamber. It's changing it, making it more chaotic, more creative. Is that dangerous? Jake asked. Maybe, but I think it might also be exactly what they need to survive. They returned to the heart chamber where other architects were waiting. Jake could sense tension among the alien beings. Some glowed brighter, others darker. They were arguing, without words, communicating through changes in light and energy. The council is divided, their guide explained. Half believe we should embrace the chaos your minds bring to our collective consciousness. The other half believe we should remove you and return to our pure state. Laura Price stepped forward. What if there was a third option? What if we didn't merge completely but work together as partners? Explain, several architects said at once. Our quantum drive is connected to your heart chamber, but it's still separate, Carlos said. What if we kept it that way? Connected but independent. You could benefit from our creativity, and we could learn from your knowledge, but neither of us would lose what makes us unique. Amy had been thinking about the preserved beings. And what about all the species you've collected over the millions of years? Don't they deserve a chance to live again? The architect guide dimmed with shame. Most have been preserved too long. Their consciousness has faded beyond recovery. But some haven't, Laura said, checking her scanner readings. Some still show strong brain activity. They could be revived. Jake saw an opportunity. Here's what I propose. We work together to create something new. Not architects controlling other species and not humans trying to be architects. A partnership where everyone contributes their strengths. The younger species you've preserved could be revived and given worlds of their own to develop, Amy added. Instead of collecting civilizations, you could nurture them. And we could help, Lisa said. Human crews working with architect wisdom to guide developing species without controlling them. Ryan Clark, who had been quiet, suddenly looked excited. I'm getting signals from some of the preserved beings. Very faint, but they're trying to communicate. He worked at his equipment, trying to boost the signals. Slowly, voices began to come through the speakers. Weak voices speaking in languages no one had heard for thousands of years. Help us, the voices whispered. We want to live again. The architect guide shimmered with emotion. By the cosmic currents, they're still aware. After all this time, they're still conscious. Jake made his decision. We revive them. All of them that we can save. We give them ships, worlds, freedom to choose their own path. That would require enormous resources, the architect said. You have enormous resources, Carlos pointed out. This ship alone is bigger than most solar systems. Ben Hayes had been thinking about the bigger picture. Captain, if we do this, we're not just changing 2 civilizations. We're changing the entire galaxy. Hundreds of species given new life, new chances. Is that what you want? The architect asked. To become gardeners of the galaxy instead of explorers or conquerors? Jake looked at his crew. Each of them nodded. This was bigger than their original mission, bigger than first contact, bigger than anything humanity had ever attempted. Yes, Jake said. That's exactly what we want. The architect guide grew brighter than they had ever seen it. Then we have much work to do. But first, we must convince the rest of the council, and that will not be easy. As if summoned by their words, more architects appeared in the heart chamber. The darkest ones, the ones who opposed change, surrounded the humans. You would have us abandon millions of years of perfect order. One of them spoke with a voice, like grinding metal. You would have us risk everything on the chaos of inferior minds. We're not inferior, Jake said firmly. We're different, and sometimes different is exactly what's needed. The dark architect grew larger, more threatening. Prove it. Show us that your chaos can succeed where our order has failed. The heart chamber is failing. Our collective consciousness will die within days unless something changes. Save us with your human methods, or accept that you are not worthy to stand among us. Jake felt the challenge hit him like a physical blow. The fate of both species rested on their ability to save an alien mind that was dying from its own perfection. We'll do it, he said. But we do it our way with our crew, using human thinking. Agreed, the Dark Architect said. But if you fail, you will join the other preserved species in our collection chambers. Jake nodded grimly. And if we succeed, you release all the preserved beings and work with us to change how this galaxy develops. Agreed. The greatest challenge of human history was about to begin. Jake and his crew stood before the dying heart chamber. The massive sphere of energy that held millions of architect minds was flickering like a candle in the wind. They had less than 3 days to save it, or both species would face terrible consequences. How do we fix something we don't understand? Lisa asked, staring at the alien technology. Carlos had been studying the connection between their quantum drive and the heart chamber. Maybe we don't fix it the way they would. Maybe we heal it the way humans heal things. Dr. Amy Stone was scanning the energy patterns. Carlos is right. Look at these readings. The heart chamber is dying because it's too organized, too perfect. It's like a body without an immune system. It can't adapt to new situations. Jake made a decision that would have seemed crazy to most people. Laura, I want you to link your mind directly to the heart chamber. Not to control it, but to share with it. Laura Price looked scared. Captain, that could kill me. Or worse, it could trap my consciousness in there forever. I know, Jake said gently. That's why I'm asking, not ordering. But I think you're the key to this. You've always been good at understanding different systems and making them work together. Ben Hayes stepped forward. If Laura does this, she shouldn't do it alone. We all go in together or none of us go. The architect guide flickered with worry. Linking human minds to our collective consciousness has never been attempted. The chaos of your thoughts could destroy what remains of our order, or it could save it, Ryan Clark said. He had been listening to the weak signals coming from the heart chamber. I can hear them in there. Millions of voices all saying the same things, thinking the same thoughts. They're dying because they can't change, can't grow. Jake looked at each of his crew members. This is it, people. This is the moment that will decide the future of both our species. Are you with me? Every single crew member nodded. Even Ben, who had been the most cautious throughout their journey, stood ready to risk everything. They linked themselves to the heart chamber using a combination of human technology and architect systems. Carlos configured their quantum drive to create a bridge between human consciousness and the alien collective mind. As soon as the connection formed, Jake felt overwhelmed by the vastness of the architect collective. Millions of voices, millions of memories, millions of years of perfect knowledge filled his mind. But he also felt their sadness, their loneliness, their slow death from lack of change. Can you hear us? Laura's voice came through the mental. Link, we hear you, the architect minds replied. But your thoughts are so chaotic, so unpredictable. How do you function with such disorder in your minds? The disorder is what makes us alive, Amy said, her consciousness floating among the alien thoughts. Perfect order is death. Life requires mistakes, surprises, failures that teach us new things. Ben's mind touched theirs, bringing his protective instincts and his hard-won wisdom from years of keeping people safe. You've been trying to preserve life by stopping it from changing, but life without change isn't life at all. Carlos shared his engineering knowledge, but more importantly, he shared his approach to problem-solving. When I fix something, I don't just restore it to perfect condition. I try to make it better than it was before. I learn from what went wrong and use that knowledge to improve. Ryan brought his communication skills, but also his deep understanding of how different minds could connect and share ideas while remaining unique. You don't have to lose your identity to grow. You can stay who you are while becoming something more. Lisa shared her navigation experience, her knowledge of finding paths through unknown territory. Sometimes the best route isn't the most logical. Sometimes you have to trust your instincts and take risks to reach your destination. As their human minds mixed with the architect collective, something amazing happened. The rigid patterns of perfect thought began to loosen. New ideas started forming. Ideas that were neither purely human nor purely architect, but something new. The heart chamber's flickering energy stabilized and began to grow brighter. The dying consciousness was learning to embrace uncertainty, to find strength in questions rather than answers. But the process was dangerous. Jake could feel his human identity dissolving into the vast alien mind. He was becoming something else, something that might not be human anymore. Don't lose yourselves, he managed to think to his crew. Stay human, but share what makes us human. It was Laura who found the solution. Instead of trying to merge completely with the architect minds, she created bridges between them. Connections that allowed sharing without losing individuality. Look, she said, her consciousness glowing with excitement. We don't have to become the same to work together. We can be different and still be connected. The change rippled through the entire collective consciousness. For the first time in millions of years, the architects experienced genuine surprise, real creativity, actual growth, and in that moment of change, something unexpected happened. The preserved beings in the collection chambers began to wake up. The chaos and creativity flowing through the ship's systems reached them, giving their trapped consciousness the energy to revive. Thousands of alien voices suddenly filled the communication channel, speaking in hundreds of languages, all asking the same questions. Where are we? How long have we been asleep? Are we free? The dark architects who had opposed the change were stunned. Their perfect preservation systems had failed, but in the best possible way. The beings they had collected were alive again, Jake and his crew, slowly disconnected from the heart chamber, their human minds intact but changed by the experience. They had memories now of vast cosmic perspectives, but they were still essentially human. The challenge is complete, the architect guide said, its light brighter than ever before. You have saved our collective consciousness and given freedom to thousands of preserved beings. The agreement is fulfilled. But the dark architects were not finished. Their leader approached, still radiating disapproval. You have disrupted millions of years of order, it said. You have destroyed our perfect preservation systems. You have introduced chaos into our pure thoughts. Jake stood firm. Yes, we have. And your people are alive again because of it. The dark architect flickered, and Jake realized it wasn't angry. It was confused. For the first time in its existence, it was experiencing doubt, uncertainty, growth. I do not understand these new thoughts in my mind, it admitted. They are uncomfortable but also interesting, Amy smiled. That's what we call learning. It's supposed to be uncomfortable sometimes. Over the following days, the massive architect ship became a hub of incredible activity. The revived beings were given ships and resources to return to their homeworlds or find new ones. The architects began redesigning their ship from a collection facility into a mobile base for nurturing young civilizations. Carlos worked with architect engineers to create hybrid vessels that combined human intuition with architect knowledge. The Aurora's Edge became the prototype for a new kind of ship, one that could bridge the gap between species and cultures. Jake found himself appointed as the first human architect ambassador, responsible for coordinating the revival and relocation of preserved species throughout the galaxy. Captain, Ryan said as they watched the first group of liberated beings depart for their new homes, what do we tell Earth about all this? Jake thought about his home planet, so far away and so small compared to the vast community they had discovered. We tell them the truth, that we went out looking for new worlds and instead found a new purpose. We're not just explorers anymore. We're gardeners, helping life grow throughout the galaxy. Lisa was already plotting courses to dozens of worlds where young civilizations were developing. It's going to take centuries to visit all the species that need guidance, and we have to do it right, helping without controlling. That's what makes it worthwhile, Amy said. She had been studying the records of species that the architects had previously guided to extinction through overprotection. We learn from their mistakes and do better. Ben was organizing security for the liberation missions. There will be species that don't want our help, and others that might try to abuse the technology we're sharing. We need to be ready for that. Laura had become the chief liaison between human and architect minds, helping both species learn to work together without losing their unique identities. The hardest part will be staying human while working with beings who think so differently from us. 6 months later, the hybrid fleet was ready for its first mission. The Aurora's Edge, now permanently linked to an architect vessel, led a group of ships toward Earth. But this wasn't a return home. This was the beginning of a new chapter in human history. As they approached Earth's solar system, Jake stood on the bridge looking at his home world. It seemed so small now, so fragile, but it was also beautiful, the birthplace of a species that had surprised the galaxy by choosing cooperation over conquest. Open a channel to Earth, he told Ryan. Channel open, Captain. Jake took a deep breath. This message would change everything for humanity. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Aurora's Edge calling Earth. We have completed our mission, but not in the way we expected. We found alien life, and they found us. More importantly, we found a new purpose for humanity in the galaxy.